So, good morning, everyone. It's an honor for me to be a part of a SDS online event series. I'm Maria Papalampropoulou. I'm a social worker and a Ph.D. candidate in health anthropology at the University of Western Macedonia. Yes, for the past 5 years, my research has focused on perinatal grief and women's recovery following this trauma. Today, we are delving into a subject of profound importance, yet one that often remains in the shadows, the complex psychological landscape of perinatal loss. Our discussion will highlight the critical role of scientific and social recognition in navigating this journey with compassion and expertise. The World Health Organization reports approximately 6.3 million perinatal deaths each year globally. This staggering figure, as detailed in joint reports by the WHO and UNICEF on the global burden of stillbirth, is not just a statistic. Behind this number lie millions of individual stories of deeply personal and often silent sorrow. When we speak of perinatal loss, we are referring to a spectrum of devastating experiences, miscarriage, the loss of pregnancy before 20 to 24 weeks, stillbirth, the death of a baby in utero after that point or during the birth, and neonatal death, the loss of a baby within the first 28 days of life. Each represents a unique trauma, yet all share the common thread of hopes and dream for a future that will not come to pass. The text we're grounding our discussion in today rightly emphasizes that perinatal loss has a significant effect on the psychosynthesis of the mother and the father, but my research has to deal with the mothers. This term refers to the intricate process of developing a cohesive sense of self. A perinatal loss can shatter this, disrupting a woman's identity, particularly her identity as a mother, her worldview, her fundamental sense of meaning and trust in the world, but also in her body. As a systematic review in the Journal of Reproductive and Infant Psychology confirms, such a loss is a well-established key risk factor for future psychological complications, including pervasive anxiety and the emergence of clinical depressive symptoms. Well, I think it's crucial to understand that this is not simply sadness. It's a traumatic bereavement that can lead to symptoms consistent with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. A point reinforced by research from Kirsten and Wagner on complicated grief after perinatal loss. Well, we know while normal grief responses eventually lessen over time, complicated grief involves intense, persistent, and debilitating symptoms that significantly impair daily functioning for an extended period, typically more than 6 to 20 months, depending on diagnostic criteria like those from the ICD-11 or DSM-5-TR. This isn't just prolonged sadness. It's a state where the individual remains deeply preoccupied with the loss, struggling to accept the death, experiencing intense yearning, and finding it difficult to rearrange again with life. This distinction is crucial for appropriate diagnosis and, of course, support. One of the most cruel and complicating factors in perinatal bereavement is the pervasive issue of disenfranchised grief, as originally defined by Kenneth Doka. a leading expert on grief. Disenfranchised grief is sorrow that isn't openly acknowledged or socially supported. The provided text underscores that many parents feel they have no legitimate right to express their profound loss, a stark contrast to socially recognized deaths. Society, often uncomfortable with the topic of infant death, can inadvertently minimize the loss with, okay, well-intentioned but deeply hurtful platitudes. This creates a terrible internal conflict for the grieving parents who are experiencing immense pain while simultaneously receiving cause that their suffering is, I don't know, exaggerated, or that they should be quickly overcome this. This societal failure to validate the grief leads to profound isolation, of course, and significantly complicate the healing process. Therefore, the cornerstone and the main and indispensable stage of dealing with perinatal bereavement is authentic recognition and compassionate acceptance. This is supported by key clinical guidelines from professionals which emphasize compassionate communication and validation, like the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Recognition means many things. First of all, unequivocally acknowledging the baby's existence and significance, irrespective of the length of gestation or whether the baby took a breath outside the womb. Acceptance is the context, and in this context does not mean being okay with the loss. Rather, it refers to the acceptance of the grief itself, its intensity, its duration, its often unpredictable nature as a valid human, and necessary response to an unbearable loss. It's about affirming the parent's identity as parents to this child, even in death. This validation is the bedrock upon which further healing can be built. And this is precisely here in fostering this critical recognition and acceptance as we as doctors, nurses, social workers, counselors, psychologists, thanatologists, take center stage. We are uniquely positioned to be the first line of compassionate response, and many times we don't know how to deal with it, how to counter the disenfranchisement and to actively contribute to the healing journey. Our role extends far beyond the purely professional aspects of care. Crucially, this vital recognition and acceptance must also extend from the wider community and society, encompassing family and friends. The absence of such support from one's personal network and the broader social fabric can profoundly exacerbate the grief, leading to increased isolation and mental health challenges. Therefore, a collective forum from all levels, clinical, familial, and societal, is essential for the truly comprehensive healing. So, how can you effectively offer this support, each one of us in our own role? First, through validation and empathetic communication. This means actively and deeply listening, giving permission for the expression of raw emotions. It's crucial to create a space where grief, anger, sadness, whatever someone is feeling is accepted and permissible without judgment. Second, by providing comprehensive information and support resources. This includes offering clear, gentle explanations about what's happening and connecting individuals and families with specialized resources. Whether we are healthcare personnels, friends, family members, or simply supporting community members, we should be ready to connect them with a support group, psychologist, therapist, and maybe appropriate literature. The goal is to help them to find the specific support that best suits their needs. What else? Third, by creating, this is very important, by creating safe, sacred spaces for expression and remembrance. The physical environment matters so much. Facilitating memory making is profoundly important, offering to take footprints or handprints, photos, or provide a special blanket or a memory box. A systematic review in journal midwifery provides strong evidence that these tangible items are a crucial part of bereavement care and aid in the grieving process. Fourth, through advocacy, education, and systematic change, our role as expertise maybe extends to educating community and improving bereavement care protocols. Fifth, by ensuring continuity of care and long-term follow-up. We know that grief is not a linear process with a fixed endpoint, taking with families beyond the immediate crisis period and providing tailored support during subsequent pregnancies is crucial. In conclusion, perinatal loss is a profound human experience with far-reaching psychological consequences, often rendered more painful by a societal tendency towards silence. Healing is possible, and it begins with authentic recognition and compassionate acceptance. Healthcare professionals and the community must be actively challenge the silence, and the professionals have to advocate for holistic compassionate bereavement care as a standard component of all perinatal services. Unfortunately, in my country, there is nothing of all this. Let us carry forward the understanding that every story of loss matters. Every baby, however brief their existence, is remembered, and every grieving parent deserves our most skilled, empathetic, and unwavering support. That's all from me. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to this vital era of care. I hope this extended discussion has been insightful and empowering. I'm now open to any question or reflection you may have. And I want to apologize for my English. They're not my native tongue. I believe that it was okay.
I think there's nothing to apologize for, first of all. Thank you so much. This is quite concise but very punchy, and the significance that this has. And if I may, I'll just prompt you to tell us a little bit more. You put it in the last one of the last slides that you mentioned cultural sensitivity in grief support. And could you just talk to us a little bit more about the significance of culture and perhaps faith and how that may be shaping the experiences that women have that you have been encountering in your research? And if you could just tell us a little bit more about that, and we open it up after that for questions and comments as well.
Okay. I have met women in my research that they're deeply their deep believing God has change the way they are went through the grieving process. And this is something that we find in the literature too, that the the um, the culture and the way that someone is attached with the God has a significant part in the grieving process. But I think that this has to do, we find differences because in the West we can meet women who are more I don't know, more independent or more not such person who are in their beliefs so in touch. And I think that has to do. I want to tell you that this is one of the things that I'm working on in my research, and I'm looking forward to share with you the results. I believe in that next year this would be possible.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Could we just invite anyone if you have comments or questions on the subject, this is a good time. And feel free to turn your mics on. We're a very small group, so jump.
May I add something more that has to do with the research and the results with my research? Among all the principal and net worth findings of my research today is the profound solidarity, the solidarity felt by women who have experienced perinatal death for those who are yet to endure a similar experience. And it is precisely this solidarity that motivates their participation in the study. Not only this, but this is the main concept. And women keep saying that we have to talk about that because we are women and we know the power and the meaning of solidarity. Because we are all alone in the journey of difficulties in our lives. And that has to do with the gender, of course. This is amazing that these women, with their loss, with their difficulties, with their isolation, are thinking about the women that are who are yet to endure this the perinatal loss. It's amazing, and these women are the main reason that I keep doing this, because there was some times that I wasn't so good, and I was telling to myself that maybe this is not okay and it's not for you, and this is really difficult and you cannot handle it, so stop it. But the solidarity of the women always was the total feedback for me.
This is really powerful, sort of like how grief essentially leads to solidarity and empathy for anticipated loss. Sarah, I think you're ready to come in. I can see.
I was really interested in your talk. I'm studying women who've particularly had a stillbirth in the 1960s and the time where there was so much, things were very different in terms of seeing the baby and making memories. But one thing that strikes me when I read the contemporary work and listen to your talk is that one thing has really continued and not changed much, and that's the problem of silence and the problem of people talking about it. Women these days are really talking with other mothers who've lost a baby, so that's a big change. But in terms of talking to their friends and their community, and we've had so many campaigns about, oh, this must be made more speakable. It's been on, they've had examples on soap operas and and they've got, there's the annual Remembrance Month and Week. And yet there's still this silence. And it seems to be that the friends and acquaintances and family don't want to re-provoke the trauma and grief in the mother And the mother doesn't want this as well, but she also does want to speak about her childhood and experience very much. And sometimes it's the mothers who seem to be left to start the conversation. And this was also in the 60s. I had an example of a woman who she left her empty pram in the hallway so that anyone who came to speak with them had to speak about the loss. But do you have any thoughts about what strategies could change the way the sort of more general public respond and interact successfully with people who've lost a baby?
I think that there are many things that we can do. The public awareness campaigns, it's one thing. The media representation, movies, TV shows, books that portray these experiences authentically, and a platform for parents to share their stories can also help. These things that we're doing today can change. I believe that most of all that we should change the way that we see that kind of death, and this can be only changed in public awareness campaigns. That's something that I'm trying to do in my work also, because I work with women. I'm a counselor, and I'm trying to do it. And I can see that this has a very good results. But I believe that this can change even in our private conversation, when we're out with our friends, when we're standing in a cafe and talk about other things. We can talk about it. We don't talk about these things. We don't talk about infertility. We don't talk about abuse. We don't talk about perinatal loss. And these subjects are subjects that are present in our lives, and the statistics show us that these things have to be invisible, because we're invisible, people are struggling to talk about it and isolate. And this has to do with all the difficulties women have to deal with. I believe that if men lose baby, this subject would be totally over-talked. And I wouldn't have a subject to research, to make my research. I believe that this has a gender root, totally. But the change starts from us. The change starts from us. I believe that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for your loss. I hope that you had the space and the time to talk about your baby.
Well, it was my brother. It's my parents' baby who
Okay.
died.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay.
So I'm sort of doing this sort of belated discovering him and making him have some sort of visibility after the incredible invisibility, and also his sort of peers that, yeah, their sort of lives
That
were very
feeling,
unmarked.
that feeling was the reason I started my research, because I never had this experience, but three women who were and are real close to me had the same, lost their babies in very close time. And this feeling that I had the feeling that something is not okay and they cannot talk about it. And that situation isolated them so much and make them really angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
David has also put a question in the chat. They're unable to speak in the mic because they're in a public space, but I don't know if you can see the chat, but the question is, what do you think is the earliest age that we can or should be teaching people about perinatal bereavement?
Well, I think that this question is easy to be answered. The same age that we can talk about the death, all kinds of deaths, because this is one we shouldn't this and this is one of the problem of perinatal death. We believe and we have make it to be a different type of death that has to be in shadow. I believe that this question is easy to be answered, and my answer is that we can talk to the kids about perinatal death when they are ready to have an awareness of death and loss and sorrow and all that, and that is in the age of 4, I believe. I talked to my son about death in an early age because we had a loss. We lost our dog, and I had to talk about it. But this is life. Life is totally goes hand to hand with death, and that is a situation that we cannot change. It's in our nation to live death, to face it. So I believe that, and especially the little kids, because sometimes mother have a perinatal loss in the second child or in the third child. We have to talk to the kid and to tell that that's something that is happening, and mom is here and dad is here, but we are missing and we are grieving your brother, your sister, your siblings, whatever.
I guess it's important to think, or perhaps the question is not at what age, but in what way. So you just adapt the way you would speak about death and about losses based on the developmental stages of children.
Mm-hmm.
And you've mentioned age groups, and from the age of 9 and above, children
Yes.
have a better understanding of the finality of death, whereas beforehand there's a little bit more of the magic
Mm-hmm.
thinking, but still there is different ways that could be adapted to be discussing losses in that sense. Very small young babies actually under the age of 1 experience very intense feelings of loss when their dummy is lost, their pacifier, and they can't find it and they cry. And that's a traumatic loss for them. So
Yes,
loss is always part of life from the very beginning, and there's parallels.
exactly.
Can I ask you, Maria, if you could say a bit more, and this is probably quite contextualized because your research is placed in Greece, and there is a particular socio-political environment, there's a particular leadership in the church and the orthodoxy. So there's particular concepts that affect people's upbringing. But thinking about patriarchy, how does the historical framework of patriarchy in your kind of knowledge and process in this research, how does that affect the fact that such losses become disenfranchised?
Well, patriarchy affects all the aspects in our lives and all. I believe that it's not just in Greece. I believe that worldwide this is a statement. In my country, where I live in a country where patriarchy is really strong and unbreakable, patriarchy make a sense of make women feel guilty about their losses. that they are responsible for their loss. And that's one more thing that they don't want to talk about it, and they believe that this should stay in silence, because patriarchy makes women to feel that they are responsible for everything that is wrong in this earth. We took the apple, we bite the apple, so we are responsible about that. And about everything that is not okay and it's wrong, everything that is wrong is our own fault. In my country, I found that in my research that women feel that they are responsible, that they had made something wrong. Even that we know from literature that miscarriages, for example, has to do with problems and of the baby, of the embryo. Has nothing to do with the mommy. But mothers still think that maybe it's something that I ate, maybe I was in the gym and I shouldn't be there, maybe I was more stressed, maybe it was that thought that I was afraid of being a mom. I was thinking that I'm not ready to be a mom. I'm not ready to be a mom. So maybe that thought made me to have a miscarriage, for example. Imagine that if the things were different, and a man took the apple from the snake, and we have to blame them for everything. That's why I told you the solidarity. Women and members of the LGBTQ community knows the power and the meaning and why we have to have solidarity, and why we have solidarity.
Mm, mm. I don't see someone else jumping in, so I'm just going to follow on from that very quickly. That feeling or that experience of guilt that women might feel in that situation, you've mentioned in the beginning that there's an impact on the relationship with a spouse, like a wife, a husband, or whatever, a partner. Have you found in your research so far anything to indicate what is the relationship like, and how does the spouse kind of play a part in the support that they have? Are they open to that support? Do they feel that there's an understanding? And is it that maybe that lack of understanding or perceptiveness of understanding kind of creates that impact in the relationship if it's negative? So maybe just generally about the relationship, how does that play out?
Well, unfortunately, my research, my couples, the mothers has heterosexual marriages, unfortunately. So I have to talk about the men. Patriarchy does affect them too, but they don't understand it. And the patriarchy makes them to hide their feelings. They believe that women tell me that they keep saying that you have to get over it. You are strong. I'm here for you, but we have to move, and they don't express their feelings, and that can be really difficult and very dangerous, as you know better than me. And that has to do with the gender. And these things creates in the couple a gap. Women are isolated. They believe that something is wrong with them because they see that everyone around them, even the husband, is moving on. And they believe that something is wrong with me. They stop having faith in the environment, even in their own bodies, because that thing happened in their own bodies. So I believe that a second step should be research about the feelings of the fathers and the grief of the fathers that are in this situation, because even if a father wants to be emotional, wants to be is emotional, people are emotional, wants to solve his emotions, the environment and the family member are going to tell him that you should be there for her and you have to be strong. So stop, be like that, stop show your emotions, stop crying, stop. So this is really complicated, and we don't have so much literature about fathers' grief in perinatal loss. There is a gap in research there. I don't know if I'm answering your questions.
I think you are, because in many ways, what you're saying as well is that, patriarchy as a framework has, especially in the context of your research, it really affects the way of life. And it has affected the way of life. I mean, that's historically true from, around the world. Um, but I think that's really significant what you're saying, how that affects, in your case, the men, the husbands, the spouses, the partners that, in terms of their role and what's expected, the gender norm. And then it also affects the gender norm on the other end about what women in that situation are allowed to experience and what not. I think it does answer it. I guess it raises the point of how ethically multifaceted that is when you're trying to understand that human experience of a person going through that situation. Like, highlights the complexity, I guess, of that, and highlights the fact that there's so many root causes for the disenfranchisement of the grief. Sarah, David, do you have other comments or questions for Maria, or suggestions as well? I know, Maria, you're still in the process, and are you finished with all the data analysis?
I have finished the interviews with mothers, and now I'm writing the results.
Okay.
I believe that this will be completed by maybe March. I hope so. I hope
Next
so.
year we'll have you on again just to tell us the results.
Yes, this will be great.
So Sarah and David, if you had any other comments, I know, David, you can't speak, but if you want, you can put it in the chat. Any other comments, questions?
I was wondering about one of the big differences that I've noticed and change is that in recent times there's a big move for parents to create continuing bonds and to do things as if the baby is still very much alive. So they would buy presents for their babies at each birthday. They would sign cards from their baby, and they would like envisage the child growing up very much. And do you feel that this is something that is, I think it's helpful to the parents. I think it's sometimes hard for society to understand that.
This is very helpful, and this has to do with the process of the grief as well, because we know that the attachment has a central role in the grieving process. Imagine when we lose a person, our dad, for example, we don't stop loving him. We don't have him, but we don't stop loving him. So this connection is so helpful for us to continue to grieve, to express our sorrow, but to continue to and to give a meaning in our loss. The attachment and the process and the things that the parents want to do for the baby. Some parents, for example, make a birthday cake every year. One woman in my research tells me that she goes in the baby's grave every year with balloons and with her son, the older son, and that they are having a mini party there. And that is so meaningful for them because they keep have this attachment so strong. And also for her, she told me that through her loss, he had changed so much the way that she saw the life and the difficulties that she has to deal with, and making meaning from her loss was a great surprise for her. But because she didn't believe that she could do that through the loss to make a new beginning. But we know that losses and deaths, unfortunately, are also a start for something else, a start for a new us, for a new me. I lost my baby, I lost my father, I lost someone that I love, that has a death and a rebirth in me too.
Yeah.
Just a final thing, maybe. You've mentioned something, you alluded to something earlier about this, but it's also the loss of a role of parenthood. And quite often in a lot of training that I do, people will say, well, does that mean when a child dies generally, but also with perinatal loss, like, does that mean I'm not a parent anymore? Like, have I ever been a mother? Like, if you gave birth to a baby that lived for 2 weeks and then they died, is that person still a mother? And that's a key question. And maybe if you have any thoughts around that, about the role, the disenfranchisement of the role.
Well, we know that parenthood begins at the receiving, when when the when we know that we have a baby in our belly. Maybe before that, when we start thinking of being parents, because it's that thought that start the attachment. That thought start the attachment. That thought start the bonding with the baby. Of course, they are mothers. Of course, they are fathers, and we have to call them by that, and we have to remember them if they want to on Mother's Day or on Father's Day, and we have to deal with it, and we have to be there for them to talk and to share with us their thoughts that they are parents, but they don't have the baby. It's a big question when parenthood begins
Yeah,
and when it ends.
yeah, yeah. It's a
But
bit,
literature shows us that parenthood begins when we start have this attachment with the baby, and the attachment starts far before we have the baby in our arms.
mm, mm. Okay, and I concur that, I guess, because concur to that because if I think of fostering, many people
Yes.
who foster
Yeah.
children have research shows that they have an identical kind of similarity in terms of parenthood and how they develop that, and there's a feeling, in a sense, and an experience of parenthood, even though it's a foster child that might not stay around for
Of
long.
course, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay. Well, any final thoughts, Maria, or any kind of thoughts you want to share with us before we close this?
I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm in the situation that I'm trying to finish my research, and I'm trying to understand what all this has changed in me too, because this was a great journey with many difficulties, but I'm so grateful about it. And I'm so grateful for the mothers that have talked to me. For many of them, was the only one chance to talk about the baby. It was like a memorial, the interview. And what else? I'm so glad to be part in these activities. I want to thank you for your understanding. I'm trying to improve my English also. I can read them and I can understand anything, but when I have to talk, I'm a little more stressed, I believe, than I have to be or I should be. Okay. Uh,
Well, I'm glad today that was not the case, and you've been really great and confident,
Thank you.
everything and the way you've said things. So
That's the way I looked. Okay.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time, Maria.
Thank
Really
you. I
appreciate it.
hope that
Thank you.
we can talk and discuss about the results
Yes.
of the research. And I believe that we should talk about the death and grieving from the view of patriarchy and gender-based.
That's a big, big area. Yes, absolutely. And I think there's dearth of research in that as well. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant. Thank you for sharing these thoughts and sparking a bit of thinking for us as well. Thank you to Sarah and David for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I assume, Maria, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, kind of be in touch, they could you could put your email in the chat if you wanted as well. But I'm sure that
I'm
people
gonna write it down.
reach out or they can ask me or the association and we'll be able to connect you. So thank you everyone and have a lovely day wherever you're based. And we'll reconnect soon. I'm going to be stopping the recording now, and here's the email as well. Thank you, Maria.